So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly one photo, how I took it, what I thought about when I was trying to take the photo, and how I'm going to actually edit it. And all of this with just my phone. All right, let's get into it. I love the light coming in through the trees over there because the sunrise is happening over there. And I think this could make a pretty neat photo. I do want the photo to kind of guide through the bridge over there, but I also want to get a nice framing around it. I think that tree would help. Let's see what the initial photo might look like. Okay, that's actually pretty neat. Now, what would happen if I move back? I think the problem with going too far back is I'm going to lose the size of the bridge. This is a phone, so I don't really have zooming functionality for this lens, or at least not optical zoom. And as you can see, the further back I go, I do get a lot of this dirt trail that I don't really want in it. I want to make sure that it's kind of clean, and I think this kind of messes with the aesthetic. I also lose, like I said, the size of the bridge. I could zoom in, but I know I'm going to lose a lot of quality if I zoom in. So let's stick to just the normal. This portrait is nice, but I do really want to be able to enhance the light because I know that that's going to be a big component in this photo. And if I do a portrait orientation, then it just doesn't have enough room to breathe. I really want the light to go from one corner and really be shining and showcase the shining of the light on the bridge, because I think that would make for a much more powerful photo than just a little bit of room for the light to kind of show its etherealness. I want to be careful though, because I do want to make sure that I don't get some of these trees at the top. I want to kind of not have a frame from the top because I want the light to come in, and because I know that there's a little bit of mist in the air, and when I go into editing, I want to really enhance that mist and ethereal look that comes with the mist mixing in with the light. So I do want that maybe in the frame, but if I go too far in, I lose it. If I go a little bit to the right, I think that could work. So yeah, again, have to be careful of the branches coming in from the top. Let's see, if I go a little bit lower, I lose a little bit of the bridge. So let's go a little bit higher, and let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to go a little bit higher then and angle it down a little bit. That way I can remove some of the branches from the top, but I still get a decent view of the bridge going into the photo. Now that we're back, let's go and actually edit the photo. Okay, so I have the photo pulled up in Lightroom mobile version. And the first thing that I want to try and do is see if what I took was actually what I thought I would end up getting. And I can immediately see that on the very left, there is a little bit of a dark contrasting branch that is sticking out over here. And so when I took this photo, I thought about the type of photo that I want, the type of feeling that I had at that time. And I think I wanted to create a very fairy tale-like feeling for this photo. So some of the things that I really want to do is enhance the lighting, enhance the atmosphere that was there, which is a little bit visible here, but I really want to enhance it a little bit more and just draw attention towards the center. So the first thing that I like to do usually is start with the lighting, and I'll try to increase the exposure a little bit. I think I want to increase it just because I know that this is going to be viewed more on the screen, and I want to bring it up more than what it currently is. The contrast I think could be a little bit higher. Remember, I'm only just changing the slides a little bit right now based on what I think would work well. Maybe I'll go back and change them. So the highlights I will increase a little bit. I think the shadows I don't want it too high. I actually want to reduce the shadow details. I think that's about good. And I think the whites, yeah, so if I increase the whites, it does lose some of the detail there, but I think that's what I'm going to end up doing anyway, so I'll increase the whites a little bit. Blacks doesn't make too big of a difference if I go down, but I don't want to get too contrast, so I'll reduce the blacks a little bit. All right, next is color. I think the color temperature actually works well. I don't think I really want to do anything right now. Maybe later on, I do want to enhance some of the greenery a little bit, but I think for now, let's just skip that. And let's see, moving on to effects. Now I want to use the dehaze a lot here, not to actually dehaze it, but actually to increase the haze in the corner, because it was pretty misty and I want to really enhance the mist over here. If I do a negative dehaze, then I know that it is going to create more haze in the entire photo, which is not exactly what I want. So let's skip that for now. I don't want a vignette from this. Maybe if I do that, I'll use a mask. Let's sharpen it up because I know that when a phone actually processes a photo and turns it into the JPEG that we normally see, then it is a lot more sharper than what this raw photo would look like. When we actually take photos with our phone, the JPEG version of it, the one that we're most used to, is actually just a compressed, altered, processed version that the phone did auto processing on. But here we want to control it a lot more, and so it's really important, again, to shoot in raw mode. I don't want any correction right now. Let's try to remove chromatic aberration, which is the excessive purpling that we see around the trees sometime. It probably didn't make that big of a difference here, but it does in the high contrast regions for low quality cameras, which include phone cameras. It does create a purpling effect, which is chromatic aberration, and Lightroom can, to an extent, get rid of some of it. Okay, now let's move on to the more fun stuff, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to create a mask, and I want to select a radial gradient because I want the start of that mask to be from here. Let's see. I want it to be a little bit longer. So because I want to point, or I want to center it where the sun would have been. And I know it's going to radiate out from there. I'm going to radiate all the way out to the bridge perhaps, because that's where I want to enhance it. And I want to make sure that it is pretty feathered. So if I move all the way down here like this, now the effects are going to be uniform throughout this mask. If I move it all the way here, the effects are going to be most highlighted in the center where that blue dot is, and they're going to radiate out a little bit more gradually towards the edge. So it doesn't create a very sharp adjustment. So for example, if I just did this, and let's say I did a light effect, and I just adjust the exposure, you can see that it creates a very sharp, obvious effect, which is not what we want. Now, if I was to increase that feathering, we can see that now that effect isn't as obvious. We can see that the gradient or the change in the exposure now is gradual throughout the range of the mask. All right, let's go back to the light, bring that back. What I want to do here is actually change the dehaze. So watch what happens. So as I decrease the dehaze or increase more haze, I introduce a lot more haze over there, which is what I wanted without the mask. And then with the mask, we can see that it does have a little bit more effect. I want to increase the temperature from there a little bit. And let's see, exposure. Now, I don't want to go too bright. I know it's going to become very unrealistic, and I don't really want to decrease the exposure. I'm going to increase it just a little bit starting from there. And I actually think that that should be good for this mask. And the next mask I actually want to create is to draw attention towards the center of the photo where the bridge lies. So let's create a mask similar to the one we just had. So a radial gradient again. But this time what I want to do is actually do the opposite of the gradient. So by clicking this button, I just inverted the filter, and I want to turn it such that it is away from So what I just did now is pretty much create kind of an inverted mask to the original mask, which had the light shining on. Now I want the regions around the light where the light isn't directly pointing down into the bridge to be a little bit less bright, because I want to kind of draw the attention away from it. So if you see here, what I'm doing is I'm darkening some of the areas on the side. Now, one thing I have to keep in mind is how dark do I want to do it? Because if I take it all the way, it becomes very unrealistic. Light doesn't fall like that, and we want to stay away from something like that. So I'll adjust it a little bit to kind of showcase where the shadows start. And I think that actually is okay for me. Adjusting the contrast, no. You don't want to touch it too much because you're going to end up oversaturating colors, you're going to end up making it very unrealistic. So I like to keep it as simple as possible. So if we take a look at the original, this was the original, that is the actual photo right now. And I think there's still something missing. I think I want to add a little bit more contrast there. So let's see if I just increase contrast by itself, what happens. So I don't want the bright parts to get brighter. Let's see if I can adjust some of the curves. I'm going to reduce some of the darker spots and make them a little bit more darker, but I've also brought up the blacks a little bit so that they aren't as dark black, and I think that really helps. Now with this photo, there is another white spot over here, which is a little bit distracting, and I'd rather not have it. Let's see what happens if I actually crop that out. Now I know that cropping actually reduces the number of pixels in the image, and I wouldn't be able to print it as large if I wanted to. But for this image, I know that I want to keep it on my phone. I don't necessarily need to showcase it on a large format. If that was the case, I would probably be using my actual camera instead. And so I think it works for this. I do want to reduce the brightness, but because the focal length of my camera is fixed, I can't really cut out everything unless I move closer. But if I move closer, I introduce more artifacts. So you kind of have to think of it while you're taking the photo to see whether or not you will have enough room for cropping, or if you want all the pixels but still retain the composition that you're trying to go for without really distorting the image too much. I actually think I'm pretty happy with this final photo. Now my focus is entirely towards the bridge, towards the center. I have the leading line going into the bridge. I have the framing from the trunk and the branch of the tree, and I have the light kind of pointing directly onto the bridge. Sure, the light will draw attention as well, but because there's negative behavior that we applied there, it will enhance the atmosphere, but more so for the actual bridge and the path leading into it to create a little bit more of a fairy tale-like feel to this photo. Now, I'm not saying that this is the only way to edit. Your editing will depend on how you feel at the moment, but as you can see, it's very easy to just edit the photos on your phone in a very simple way that doesn't take very long either. Now, because I was walking through this, it took me a little bit longer than it usually does, but the key is to definitely post-process the image to match the feeling that you had when you actually took the photo. So there's probably a lot more things that I could touch up here, but I'm not too worried about all those things. I could make, for example, the path more enhanced, but I would be adding a lot more detail into this. That would make this photo a little bit too artificial, at least for my taste. And so I think this photo for me looks pretty good. If you enjoyed this video, I'll let you know that I'm going to try and do a type of a recurring series of these types of videos where I'll take one photo, show you how I took it, and then show you how I process it. And if you want to keep watching these videos, remember to subscribe and turn on the notification so you get access to these videos when they're available. All right, I'll see you next time.